Hey everybody, thanks for coming. This is a session called Host Your Own Drupal with open source. My name is John Pugh, independent consultant, contributor to Drupal and Aegir, and I've been on Drupal a long time. Been an Aegir maintainer for a little while too. And my little independent consulting company is called Pinkdrop that I founded in December 2009. So I guess, the theme of this was just, there's such a broad subject that I decided to kind of talk about past, how we do things now and what we're going to do in the future. There's like, we use Drupal, we use open source as this promise, and you can, it's not completely a lie. You can host your own websites with 100% free software, but the reality is the setup maintenance can be really hard, it can be time consuming, right? So our goal, my personal goal, and the Aegir project and DevShop and everything is to make actually hosting your own Drupal simple and easy, as simple and easy as possible for everyone, not just for like people that know how to apt-get install and all this terminal stuff. So, just like Drupal made building a website something anyone can do, we want to make hosting Drupal websites something anyone can do. So yeah, let's talk about the past. Maybe not this far in the past, but no one would ever possibly need more than storage than that, right? 10 megs? That's enormous. Does anybody know what this is? This is the very first web server. Yeah, Tim Berners-Lee, his computer that he used to run the web server that he wrote, and you'd access it using the web browser that he wrote. And he ran it on this little computer. This was like 1991, I think. And people aren't used to this, but this machine is a server. Do not power it down. He put this sticker on it. So the racks from there got bigger and bigger, more and more expensive. We ended up with all these different models for getting servers, right? Co-location, you'd rent some space somewhere, dedicated and virtual and shared and all that. But eventually we came to getting used to getting servers on demand, right? So like EC2 came out in 2006. This is the press release for EC2. Shortly after that, these companies all came online with these really easy to use push a button, get a server, features. So Sliced Host was amazing. I don't know if anybody used that, but I used it a couple times. I loved it. It got acquired by Rackspace, became Rackspace Cloud Machines, whatever they called it. Linode was around a little earlier than this, but this is the year they started doing virtualized servers. A company called DigitalOcean came around in 2011. They kind of upped the game in terms of usability and ease of use for their API for launching cloud servers. And they focused on getting them really fast. You can get a server in like 45 seconds. Google got into it about 2012 with virtual servers. This is talking about pure like Linux VMs. And then a company called Packet came around recently, which has all the cool tools about the cloud, but each server is actually a dedicated machine. It's hardware. So they use these awesome switches and all this really crazy technology to automate the provisioning of these servers as if it's the cloud, but they're actually bare metal. But in the end, it's all just Linux. You're just getting Linux, right? You're just getting a terminal with the root, all the rest of the stuff is on you. So they have all this ease of use for getting the servers, but what you do with it is up to you. So what we want is Drupal. Right? We want Drupal running on those servers. So how do you do that? I don't know if any of you do this, but you kind of we learned all we know from Google, like just looking it up. There are thousands of blog posts, how-to articles, and it's unending about all the commands you need to run and these strange things you need to install and services you're going to learn about, all this stuff you really didn't even want to know. About like rewrite and this www data person, strange commands like chmod and chown, and it's a lot of manual stuff. You'll probably end up with being forbidden from your own website at one point or another if you're manually doing these things. And you're gonna, this is your life if you are self-hosting, typically, right? That's the past. Well, maybe it's a little bit of the present. This is a real folder on a client's site of mine that someone couldn't figure out the files folder, so they just chmoded wide open 777, and you get all these really fun files. Oh, I forgot to take a screenshot of the actual content because it's like minified PHP. It's terrifying. They're basically little viruses, right? And so with Drupal, they figured out, there's a method that if you leave that file folder open, you're going to get crap like this in there eventually. I don't even know how. We were trying to figure out how to do it last night. We were trying to hack our own site, but it's dangerous, If you're manually doing things, you might end up with a folder like this. People are downloading tarballs, modules, and just leaving them there. It's not good. So, there's a ton of documentation on the Drupal.org site too about how to install Drupal on your own server. It tells you all about web server, the database server, and PHP, and versions, and cron, and clean URLs, and all this stuff. There's just a lot of information. All the steps you need to take to get Drupal running on a server. It's not simple, right? You have to get all of these things going, But luckily, there's a quick install guide. I don't know if you know this. It's for beginners. If you're totally beginners, it's totally fine. You go read this quick install guide, and you'll get Drupal running on your server in no time, right? Except it's like this is actual page. It's really, really long. This is not that quick, and it's certainly not for beginners. But at the bottom, it says, this is in fact a simplified version of the main install guide. So, this is crazy. It's like you just want a Drupal site, and there's all these instructions you got to follow, all this stuff you kind of have to learn. And, most of us probably have learned this stuff already over the years, right? But it kind of took us years to get familiar with it and, get comfortable with doing this stuff by hand. And, there's so many more people coming to Drupal all the time that we can't, we feel like it's not like a sustainable thing to make everyone go through those 10 steps to get their Drupal running on their own server. So anyway, let's back up and talk about what it really takes. You need a web server, and it can be, you have to choose which kind you want, and you have to choose what kind of database server you want. So if you just get all these things, but blah, 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 most of you don't care. You just want Drupal, right? We just want Drupal to run. We don't really care. The checklist for running and installing your Drupal site, kind of like in the documentation, you have to do all of these things, like upload the source code, install everything, create a database, create a user. I'm going to run out of breath saying all these things. And we're not even done yet. You can add more things to this list after you leave. You'll be like, oh, I forgot to do that. I forgot to do this. But again, we don't care. It's crazy and overwhelming. We don't care. We just want Drupal, right? So, as things progress, all these amazing tools came out, Puppet and Chef and Ansible, and it's like, all of these things are going to make our lives easier, right? We're going to get, everything's going to be easy. You can run these scripts and just get Drupal, and it's totally fine. But it's like, is it really that easy? This is like another layer of chaos on top. It's another whole mess of tools to learn. It's difficult, and you really don't care in the end because you just want Drupal, right? So that's why these companies kind of came around. They figured it out. They're like, our clients, they just want Drupal. They don't want to worry about servers or memory or any of that server stuff. I remember Pantheon's early campaign was like, hosting is dead and servers are dead, and it might have been a little rough edge, but they're right. We don't, as developers, we don't really care. We just want to write Drupal code and push it somewhere and make it work. It's just a web browser. We want to see it running. We don't really care. So these guys are amazing, and they did make it really easy, and they are just giving you Drupal, right? So it is super, super easy, but they're not open source. Good reason, right? They're businesses, and they need to make money, and the reason they're so easy is because they invested a ton of money in doing all the work to design these systems to make them easy to use. So that's kind of just a summary of the past. I love old computer photos and stuff. So now we can talk about the present. So Aegir is definitely in the present, but it's actually approaching 10 years old. At least this is in commits. So the commits to the provision project in December will be 10 years old. So it's amazing. It's old. It's this thing that's been around for so long that it's still going strong, right? So, and it's built in Drupal and Drush, so it's familiar to us. There's so many tools and so many languages, and you can't, unless you know that language, you can't really make that platform any better, or you can't really. It's hard to. It becomes another job to maintain your scripts or Ansible or Chef. But Aegir is in Drupal. It's in PHP. You can add modules. It's super easy to use. You have a node called a site. You go to this website. That's another Drupal site. Type in the domain. They take away all the information that you don't really care about, just the stuff that they need to know, like what URL to respond to, what Drupal install profile to use for the site, and that's it. You click create the site, spins up the site, configures everything for you. Aegir fully automates that LAMP stack config, right? All of this stuff on the checklist gets done automatically every time because it's built into the scripts that is Aegir and provision. So it takes your site nodes and provides everything. It writes the Apache template, virtual host as a template. So it's exactly the same every time. Secure, safe, correct, every time. You don't mess with Apache configs by yourself. You don't mess with the database by yourself. It creates a database for every site, every time. Secure user, secure password, only grants access to that site automatically every time. Creates files folder, same thing, right? chmods it correctly every time, same way, because it's scripted. There's a SSL built in, right? So you can basically just check this box and enable this module, and you can secure your site. There's a new implementation that they wrote that works with Let's Encrypt, so you don't have to even worry about your certificates. It's just you check the box saying you want it secure, pings Let's Encrypt when you hit that, and that's it. It just gives you a cert, and it also renews it automatically over time, so you don't even have to renew it. Monitoring, there's tools for monitoring Aegir built in all your sites. So it's an API where it can probe your site for anything, so they check for security and roles and what, if the watchdog is enabled or if the PHP module filter is enabled, that it shouldn't be. It's like, oh, let's make a check. So it's, and because it's Drupal, someone was able to write this as a module, and you can just download it and add it and expand it and write new classes to make new things to monitor. It's really pretty interesting. This is a tool I discovered recently. Actually, it's called Graphite. Well, it's Grafana. The back end is called Graphite, and it's a statsd thing, and there's a lot of this. We made it a DrCompose file that launches this thing, and it just works. So I'll put that on our blog in a couple weeks or something. But basically, you can plug in a module, and it pings back to the server, and it gives you these awesome graphs. And this runs on your own server, and it's totally free and amazing and really beautiful. But you need, alerts too. You need to be told if something goes down. So after exploring Grafana, I realized that it's not just an open source tool. It's like they have a platform for commercial services to plug into it. So there's a service called WorldPing that you can just click in Grafana and say, I want WorldPing, and it adds it and starts piping all of those graphs in from around the globe, right? So this is just cool because it's running on your own server, but so the web service just becomes the data. It's like pinging. I don't even visit WorldPing. I visit my own Grafana to view, web response time and all these things. And they gave us this dashboard. I didn't have to create the dashboard, right? So CI too, right? I had created a tool on top of Aegir called DevShop that is more like more like CI, more like Pantheon or Aqua Cloud, where you get environments for as many environments as you want for production and dev, and even create one on the fly for a pull request, and destroy it when it's done and run tests and everything. It's all in Drupal. It's all right there. You don't need Jenkins or any other scripting at all. It's all built in. All right, trying to make it easy. So there's a server node as well in Aegir, right? It comes with one out of the box. You can add more by visiting node add server. However, with Aegir, you kind of had to set up the server beforehand. You would log in and make sure the Apaches were in there and all these configs are in there, and that the other system has access, and then you go into Aegir and add it, and it verifies and says, okay, cool, I can tell that Apache's running, I can tell the database is there, database server is there. But we wanted to make that easier, right? So the team created a little Debian package, but you can also do a manual install if you're not using Debian. But again, this is kind of still just like here, go run these commands, you know, and we're trying to cut all that out if we can. So I created a module for Aegir, we call it Aegir Cloud, right? And because all of these cloud providers we talked about all have APIs. They even mostly all have PHP little libraries that you can use to really easily ping their service and say, give me a server, you know? So we built it right into Drupal where you can click a button on Node Add Server, check the box, say I want it on SoftLay or a packet or whatever, and it knows the options. You select whatever you want in terms of memory and processors, and even the SSH keys. Like their APIs allow you to say, I want this server to have access to this SSH key to be granted access on this server. So it's like available immediately. You just create it and you can SSH in. And so what it does is, this is the packet provider, you know, so when you hit save on a server or a site on Aegir, it runs a verify task to make sure that everything's in place. With packet, but with all of them, you don't necessarily know the IP right away, right? Because it's like, you want to have that API request be super short, and they need a couple more seconds sometimes to get the IP. So we wrote some code to simply wait for it. It sits around and waits and pings the API until we know the IP, so that we can set DNS and other things. And Packet has a cool system where it actually returns the steps, so you can see like steps completed in real time. It's fun to watch. You see provisioning started and wait for all these things to finish, and then your server is ready. So yeah, the last few years I really got into Ansible. It's like probably the simplest and easiest to understand one of these config management tools compared to Chef and Puppet. It's definitely easier to understand, and it's in YAML. Everything's in YAML, which is very familiar with Drupal and PHP, so it's super compatible and easy to kind of build these bridges for. So we realize there's these roles, like there's this system called Ansible Galaxy, which is like Drupal.org. You submit roles in Ansible to this website, and it's searchable and downloadable by everyone, collaborating on all these, like there's thousands and thousands of roles that do everything. Jeff Geerling, you may recognize the name up there, he's like an Ansible machine. He's just cranked out so many amazing roles for almost everything you can think of. So we just leveraged those. We were able to say, like, grab Jeff's Solar role, grab Jeff's web hosting role, and add them to the system. So you go into the config, you say, I want these roles to be available for servers. You click add and save them. It brings them onto the server, and then when you go to create a server, there you just check the boxes. So you're like, I want that role on that role on that server. And once it's verifying, it loads it up. Yeah.
So each of those is a script that installs software that you can add as many as you want, really?
Right. A role is just kind of like a module, like in a way. It's like it's a set. These are. I mean, you can make them whatever you wanted to. Like so, but these are just kind of shared public, roles. So yeah, it just basically it takes all that. It actually generates an inventory for you. So Ansible has a concept called inventory, where you make a file that lists all your servers, or you list the server and list the roles that it should have. And since we're using checkboxes, we need to generate that dynamically, but it's YAML. It was super easy just to say, like, generate this inventory file that Ansible can read using the list of roles that the person chose and the host name of the system. And then it just runs Ansible playbook. And this is the web front end for DevShop, right? So you're not running Ansible playbook on the command line. You're not doing all these things kind of ad hoc. But it is telling you, like, there's the command we're running. So if you want to, and need to debug something or something's going wrong, you can see, like, it's running Ansible playbook command with pointing at the playbook file, and all these other options. And it's in beautiful color, and it spits it out in real time as you go along. It's really fun to watch. So from there, we're like, whoa, okay. So Ansible has this thing called variables that let you tweak the config for each server. As the author of the roles will put in like a template file, and they'll inject little variables in there. So you can set a variable for like memory limit or something, and it knows where to go inside the role, which is really great. Like there's basically, like you look at the MySQL role, there's a little variable for everything you can think of, and so instead of manually adding a config file, all you have to do is manage this like list of variables in YAML. And I was like, well, it's YAML, why not just have a text field? So we added a text field and let you punch in anything, and it actually verifies the YAML and says, okay, these variables look good. And so we were able to just click edit on the server node, type in the new config, and hit save. And when it runs verify, it uses those variables to write all those configs and whatever it happens to be doing with those variables. So really, really easy way to kind of tweak the server. And one thing that's cool about this is like, you know, all we need to do is kind of put the variables together at the end. So instead of having just an open text area, you could make like a single form field that just says memory limit, and people can punch in whatever, 256 or something like that. But we just haven't added that functionality yet. So inventory, we're talking about the inventory file. But we wanted to make, you know, we realized, so I learned there was this system called the dynamic inventory, I should say, which is exactly what it is, a dynamic, right? So you can get a plugin for like Amazon EC2 that'll ping your account and give you a list of all your servers, and so it uses that as the list of servers to run against, which makes it automatic, where if you add one in your EC2, it'll already be in that list of inventory. Plus inventory includes variables and all those other things. So the way we were able to pipe it in is with just a web endpoint. I realized you have to have a script in your Ansible hosts file that you make your Ansible host list executable, and then whatever that executable spits out becomes the inventory. So we wrote a little script that simply pulls this JSON file from the Aegir front-end server and uses that. So we can access it from anywhere. It's really cool, right? So we can run playbook inventory and pull it over the internet instead of like pushing it into servers individually. So yeah, the benefits of this integration using Aegir for Ansible means you don't have manual inventory management anymore. You don't have to manually type in Ansible commands. It's kind of like Ansible Tower. You may have heard if you're familiar, but that's like Ansible Tower is like, you know, it's like for running these things, but that's like a service. It's like, I think it's mostly open, but it's just like a license, so it's commercial software you have to pay for. Plus it's not in Drupal, so you can't really modify it, you can't really do much else with it. Ansible runs are logged and visible in the web interface, so you can go back later and see, like, why did that run fail, or you know, what happened then, how long did it take, and it maintains that history over time because they're nodes. Each task is a node. All those logs are saved in the Drupal database. This is the Galaxy page for our roles that we created. We didn't need that much, right? Turns out we could just use the MySQL role directly. Like I didn't need to extend it, but the Aegir Apache and Aegir user modules or roles each do their own thing. But again, we're leveraging Jeff's roles for Apache and Nginx. So our playlists, our little role is just a couple more steps on top of that, right? So his role handles all the setup of the server itself, and then Aegir just needs a couple extra things to be able to work. Like it just needs to be able to restart Apache without sudo, so it can automatically write these configs. So it was very little code, like 41 lines it says up there. It's really makes it much easier to maintain. Like I said, there's a central location for your inventory, and the remote service can access that. Yep.
How does it manage versioning? Like if Jeff updates his, yours doesn't work, like it changes something that makes yours break.
Right. Galaxy has versioning. So like when you create a tag, the Galaxy reads that and says, this is the version of this role. So we can specify the version and lock it in. Does that make sense? So it's just like releases, of software essentially. So I can say, like the installer for DevShop, every role is tagged to a specific version because, yeah, that can get crazy. I have to use 2.x. I have to use PHP 2.x instead of 3.x because 3.x is all PHP 7, and on Ubuntu's 14, it's a little different. It's
so you
more
occasionally
difficult.
run it, make sure that everything's okay, and you let some updates go through and see if it still works. If it works, great. You don't
Right.
do too much, but if you don't change anything over time, or continue using the versions that you last knew were good.
Right. It downloads them all to like the server, so it looks at it. There's a roles folder, and it looks it in there. So whatever's in there, it'll run. But it's up to you to like kind of make sure that role is in the right place and has the right version. So So this actually helps, that's another benefit. You're not manually handling these roles. We're kind of predetermining that these two roles work together well or whatever, like for the database and the web server. So you don't have to kind of end up messing around with that and seeing problems with the versioning. A couple of drawbacks are, it's still Aegir, so right now it has to have to get a remote server, a site deployed on a remote server, it has to have SSH access so it can rsync the files in there. And the playbooks still run as the local Aegir hostmaster user. But, it's open source, so we might eventually kind of do something different, right? So, like if you're hosting your own, you have restrictions on your systems. You might not, they might not think it's a good idea to give you access, to the servers, even if it's just another server SSHing in. So we could, in theory, write a little agent that simply pulls that remote inventory and installs everything without being completely locked down, as long as that server can reach the internet and reach the inventory file. So we ended up getting into Docker as well, which is fun because it makes Ansible feel totally obsolete. Once you're using Docker, it's like maintaining the roles seems like so much work, right? But we're trying to make it, not everybody's ready for Docker, so the Ansible roles and the traditional servers are still good and still important. But we created a module called Hosting Aegir Docker. So basically, it generates DrCompose YAML file automatically. Like Aegir has the concept of services, each which is like web or database. There's like an actual PHP class that represents each of those. And when you create a server, you check, I want that service and that service. So it was totally equivalent to the DrCompose. So we're like, we can just create these, take the service class we already have, right, and just return what DrCompose expects. So probably could have started with the, So this is like what a DrCompose file looks like, if you're not familiar. Each one of those becomes a container. The DB and HTTP, you specify the image, you basically define your whole stack in this file instead of like manually running Docker commands. And so what we realized is like if you're running a database server, for example, you have to, Docker container, set the MySQL root password environment variable, right? You want that to be secure, right? You want it to be long, so we realized, well, we just generate it and put it in. We have everything we need to know in the front end, in the Drupal database for the front end, that we can use it to print out basically all these services dynamically. So like where the path should, where the volume should be, what path those files are at, like the ports it should be running on is dynamic. Right? When you add the server in Aegir, there's a text field for the port Apache should be running on. So we were able to take this and just spit it out into these files. And it became, once we opened this up, it became super easy. Like, wow, we can just write a class to add any service, whether it's any Docker image we want. So we can start adding things, like caches or other tools, just by writing these extra classes, and then we can provision them with the front end of the Drupal site, the Drupal Aegir hostmaster site. So that's cool, because this is kind of hard. If you're running Docker, this is like how you manage your system, is editing these DrCompose files, and it's kind of scary to think that just this file is your whole system, So manually editing this and managing this isn't really that sustainable, You could put it in Git, sure, but again, there's like secrets in there. There's MySQL root passwords and things. So we find it much safer to kind of let the system generate that for us and then launch the servers, because we can still customize it. Like, we haven't added it yet, but we could add a little alter hook. Like, so you could just write a little module to kind of alter your DrCompose YAML any way you wanted to, right? So there's all sorts of little features in DrCompose YAML that you might want. So yeah, like I was saying, there's no need to manually launch these, no need to manually edit the files. It's offloading everything to Docker, so you can use DrCompose Scale and Docker Machine and Swarm and all these other tools to deal with scaling out, and you don't have to worry, we don't have to write that stuff ourselves. It allows the separation of sites, so like you can have each site get its own set of containers, and they're totally isolated, so if one site crashes, it's not going to bring down the rest. it's still Aegir, so you can actually still put multiple sites in one container if you want to, which could be useful. And you can add additional services easily. Again, there's like pre-configured, this is Docker, so you create all these images ahead of time. They're all available online too. Because it's like a community, you know, they have a community hub where you share, they provide images that they maintain and people can submit their own. But basically, everything you could ever need is already online somewhere, and you don't have to manually install it. You just say, I want this image, and it comes down and it runs. Drawbacks being, you know, it's relatively new. Not a lot of systems admins are familiar with Docker yet. And, you know, there's a certain level of trust there that you trust those containers are well written and secure, or, you know, you're going to have to learn to build your own, which isn't that difficult, but, you know. So yeah, I wanted to talk a minute about Rancher. This is an amazing open source tool that we discovered a couple years ago. It's basically like a Docker web UI. It also runs in a container, but it's really this incredible tool. You can just use it to you can just let it sit there and all your containers will show up in it. You don't even need to use it to launch. It's not like Kubernetes or anything where you need to use it to get anything to work. It'll just sit there and monitor and tell you what's running on your hosts. So each of these is like a DrCompose cluster. And on one host, we're able to launch a DevShop server. Distro.build is another DevShop server. There's actually more than one on this one host. There's a Help Drops a Symphony app. And we got a bunch more all on one host. And this thing is able to just track it for us, and we can log in and check. It's got graphs and can tell you, you know, how things are running. And it has a catalog. This is a really cool part. Like, it's basically they're putting this is even better than just Docker images. It's like each one of these is a whole DrCompose stack. So they pre-built all of these stacks with multiple containers, whatever it needs, put it in this catalog so you can just run through and click this button. You can launch Kubernetes by clicking a button in Rancher. It's wild. But like, for example, Drupal and WordPress are in there now. You click Add Drupal, you give it a name. It already knows. This is all predetermined. Like it offered a load balancer and a database server and the Drupal web server itself. And like you just click Add, and there it is. It spins it up. It generates, or it allows you to see like what the DrCompose file would look like for that catalog service. It uses, Rancher has its own little CLI, so it does some additional, basically makes it easy to add health checks and other things built in that are not necessarily built in Docker. It gives you graphs, cool graphs of things. So if you have a big complex cluster, you can get a visualization of that. And one of the really cool parts is that it has an add host feature with drivers for like everything. Like custom is you could just have a bare metal server and link it to Rancher, and then Rancher starts monitoring that server and can launch containers on that server and automatically set up networking and do so many interesting things just by taking your API key for these hosts, right? And so this almost makes like my Aegir Cloud thing obsolete because like you don't do it, you can even set a quantity, and once you hit create server, that's it. You wait a few minutes and it shows up in the front end. Like it knows exactly what to install on that thing to get the server running and to get it connected to the Docker cluster and to get it talking to Rancher. It couldn't be easier. It's really cool. So yeah, the future is clearly more Docker. Yeah.
So how does Rancher and Aegir DevShop interact and overlap?
I'm basically just using it to like monitor the Docker containers I'm using. I've explored using Rancher to like launch the things, but I found it easier just to stay with straight DrCompose. But we could add another service, for example, that adds uses Rancher CLI instead of DrCompose so we can start taking advantage of health checks and things like that. So I've experimented with it. I do have some code that interacts, but I kind of stopped using it just because it was a little too complex, and I wanted to finish the core DrCompose integration.
So it doesn't really do anything as far as launching services and stuff that you can't do just.
It's almost like equivalent to Aegir. Like you click the button and you get a Drupal site. right? But it's not. It's much more complex. It's not like a Drupal developer, off the street can just understand this. So I'm just kind of going over it because it's open source hosting, and that's kind of the general topic. But it's once we start using Docker, it's nice to have some kind of web interface to see like all these stats and graphs and all these other things. So that's basically what we use it for. It's just kind of providing a window into our system. Yeah, so I mean, like, it's just getting more and more cool. Like we can have as many Docker Compose clusters on a host as you want, as long as you have the ports and routing all set up. Like with the Docker thing, you can have set up multi-tenant things where like different customers can be on one host, or multiple apps, where we're launching WordPress or launching other systems. There's this really cool container setup called the Nginx proxy. It's a J. Wilder Nginx proxy. And there's a Let's Encrypt companion container to that. And so what the proxy does is that you can only assign like one port to a container. So like your port 80 on your system can only go to one container. So you can't, if you're running a web server, you can't have multiple clusters running on port 80, right? But this tool lets you take away the port 80 for the web server, and you specify a virtual host variable, and it'll automatically route the request to 80 to these individual containers. I'll show you in a second. So you set the URLs, and then this Let's Encrypt one also like automatically registers SSL certs based on just that environment variable. It's crazy easy. You just set virtual host. You make sure it can connect to the net. Like if you're using version 2 Docker Compose, it's like it gets its own network. So as long as the Nginx proxy container can connect to this one, it'll route all requests to those domains only to that web container. So this way we can have multiple clusters and different apps, depending on the URL you're grabbing. And the Let's Encrypt host essentially does a similar thing, but uses those domains to register an SSL cert for you automatically, renews it automatically. You just, as soon as the container's up, it says, hey, there it is, and you get SSL. It's awesome. Yeah.
So without that, can Aegir not run multiple websites on one server using Docker?
It can't run multiple web servers on one host. So Aegir uses virtual hosts in Apache, right? So it's already able.
It's happy to do that, right? That's part of what Aegir does.
Yep. Yeah. So it's just a little diagram I made because it's kind of hard to visualize like how this works. But the request comes in at the top, hits that Nginx proxy, looks at the URL. It says, okay, which container is assigned to that URL, and it routes the request to that. So you can have multiple sites, multiple web servers with multiple sites in them running on a single host. So in the future also, this whole talk is just kind of encourage collaboration. There are 1 million Docker images out there for Drupal and other things. There's 1.5 million tools for launching containers and launching local Drupal sites and things. And Aegir's been around a long time now, so the community's growing, and we're trying to get people that have expertise in all these different things to kind of come in and help us make it better. And like security experts can come in and make the roles better. Like for example, Jeff's MySQL role was so good. Company like I knew Solomon from Blackmesh is like one of the most smartest like security-minded hosting companies there is, uses that role. And they were like, oh, there's this one thing it doesn't do, submitted a pull request, and then boom, like everybody that's using the MySQL role now has the expertise of Blackmesh like running in their config. It's secure by default, right? So the community growing around this is just awesome, and we're all going to benefit from it just like we do Drupal, right? So the main point, again, is like hosting with open source has been possible for a long time. It hasn't always been easy, but now with with all these things that we're doing, it's really becoming easy. We deserve it, right? All these stacks, like all the commercial services are like 99% open source software. Pantheon, Acquia, it's almost all open source. Anyway, under the hood, right? So we're trying to finish that last mile of like scalability and management with open source and making it actually easy to do that, where you don't need to be an expert in all of these things. But we can't do it alone. And so we feel like, if Drupal can democratize site building, then we think Aegir and DevShop can do the same for hosting, if and as long as we follow Drupal's lead, right? So I looked at Drupal a lot and how it's grown over the years, and from the very beginning, it was modular. You could write modules. It was abstract and easy to use, but most importantly, it was community developed. Like before anyone knew about it, there was a second person helping Dries add modules to the very first, Drupal 1.0. So I think it was his attitude at the beginning that really set the stage for everything that followed. Right? He's like, I'm going to totally embrace this guy that wants this new feature and take his code and put it in this, and just snowball from there. Right? So we feel like we can do the same thing with DevOps and systems management and all that stuff. So yeah, we're on IRC. We have little meetings online every Thursday. There's the cooperative, so it's a pretty large and growing community. There's a Twitter account, there's docs. Come join us. That's the end, and questions, we can do demos if you want. Just kind of going to leave it open to whatever you guys.
For someone who's never used Aegir before, what's the number one entry point that you'd recommend? Like, go home, open up the laptop, and then what do I do?
Yeah, on this page is like an install section. There's a Debian package you can install, which is probably the easiest way to get it running. I don't know if you have Docker running locally or not, but I made a development script that launches it locally. So if you wanted to run it locally in a container, you can do that. Works really well to install it in a VM or on a server. But yeah, just get it installed. Because the apt-get package works. So you won't have to really mess with anything. You just need to get that login. So once it's running, you do a Drush ULI on the hostmaster site, and you get a login link, and you're in. Just poke around. Or we could do it later today. Come hang out, and we'll do a little demo. Or if there's no questions, I'll do a demo. Yeah, do you mind? Yeah.
I just wonder, so how are we confident with Drupal 8 supporting on Aegir?
Drupal 8? Yeah, host Drupal 8.
I know it's on 3.3 we support for the Drupal 8, but how do we get it ready for using it?
How is it ready to host Drupal 8?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's been ready for a couple of years. Yeah.
What about high availability stuff for like Hostmaster?
Yeah, we don't have anything like right out of the box yet, right? So it's like you would just use your regular methods. It's just a Linux box, but that's something we want. We want like, why not have scaling and caching easy? Like, because we already know how to take a checkbox and turn it into a config file, right? So it's just a matter of like defining exactly what that would look like and putting it into like a package. You could put it into a module or something. There's probably actually an issue somewhere that's like issue queue is quite old, just like the project, right? So search around in there. If not, you could submit an issue and like submit a feature request or something. But that's I think what the collaboration thing is. Like if you're familiar with setting up high availability, it'd be very helpful for us to kind of like see what you've done and what it takes to set it up that way, so then we can kind of figure out how to automate it. Right. You got another one?
I was just going to say, usually I recommend running Aegir separate from any of the sites you're trying to host, or does it matter?
Run Aegir
On a separate machine.
Oh yeah, definitely recommended, right? If you're going to be in production, you can run Hostmaster. You can run all your sites on one server, but it's Apache, so like you mess up one config. I've seen like an htaccess file of one site have a syntax error, and then Apache can't start, right? So yeah, you definitely, if you're going production, you can add in a remote server, and that way it's a separate Apache, and it has less chance of breaking. Yeah.
So one challenge that I've observed to be a kind of federal sort of like red tape network environment is that getting, for instance, Aegir 3 and Drupal 8 to just run is extremely difficult. I don't know if anyone else has faced that, but basically there's so many like checks and change management things you have to go through to like add Aegir's repository. To do the apt-gets. Just like apt-gets all super easy, whatever, but just to add the repo to Puppet to get deployed to wherever it took like 6 weeks or whatever. It's terrible. So getting like Symfony apps, like it's extremely difficult. I think I don't know if there's anything to really say about that. It just stinks.
No, yeah, I mean,
Just completely-
yeah, most of your like more strict environments, they really care about what packages are going to be installed, and you're like, yeah, you have to, it's not built into Ubuntu's repo, so you have to add a repo, and then run apt-get install.
Like getting
So-
Composer to work and all.
Right.
Going out, getting things through firewall automatically from one host is difficult. So then you introduce high availability, IPs. It can be tricky. So.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess like we could push towards having a goal of like getting an official package in the repos or something like that.
I'm just complaining than anything.
Yeah.
It's just terrible.
No, yeah.
These kind of events and Drupal and all stuff, and it's just like, but you can't it is easy, but then it's not.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I try to remind people that it's just another Drupal site, and some scripts, and so most institutions already have some trust in Drupal. So,
I figured we started all the way back on 1x, actually, the 1x to 3x upgrade, which was super hairy.
Yeah.
But it's great for developers to be able to log in and like spin up their own sites and
Yeah.
cool things from Git just without us sysadmin inside people having to do anything.
Yeah.
So it's
And
great.
so if you guys like end up learning something about like why your systems admins don't like this or that, it would be helpful like come in to the chat rooms or whatever, and maybe not just ask, but like we could figure out like what can we do to put their minds at ease, and even if we have to change the system or something like that, make it more secure, because we're writing configs, not just Apache and Nginx, and if we're missing a setting or something, we definitely want it in there, to make it more reliable and trustworthy. Yeah, that's like the eternal battle.
Definitely the SSL implementation has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Compared to
Awesome.
1x.
Cool. All right. Any more questions? Yeah.
Coming from like having done a lot of Drupal 7 work with the features module,
Yeah.
and getting that kind of mindset of always having stuff in code and deploying it as code and then reverting on features and stuff like that. It's just a little bit worrying to me to like click a button and say this. Like, so I'm saving a Drupal node,
Right.
and then all of a sudden the server's going to change or anything.
Right.
Is there anything that can be done to make it a little bit more version controlled code?
Yeah. That's kind of what DevShop does, right? So Aegir was designed as a multi-site machine. Like you can just put in a makefile even, and it'll build the whole makefile, and then you're terrified if anybody puts anything in that code base. But what we started with for DevShop was like, well, if we can use a makefile, why can't we just use Git instead, right? So we'll just launch it right here. So it uses this Git repo to launch the site instead of just loose code, right? So it solves exactly that problem. You do a Git push, it has a webhook, it'll pull the most recent code to the server. You can see like Git status and see if everything's in order, and it has built-in hooks. So like after you do the Git pull, it'll automatically clear the caches. It'll automatically revert features if you check that if you want that. So yeah, absolutely. So like that, you can create multiple environments here. Choose what branch or tag you want it to be on. This is like slowly making its way into Aegir itself, but it's a separate distribution from a host master. So there's like a slightly different install process. But we have like an install script that does everything. Actually uses Ansible to install instead of Debian, because people not all use not everybody doesn't use Ubuntu, right? So the DevShop install script is platform agnostic. It works on Red Hat also.
So it works like totally again offline, like not. If I grab the installer set of scripts, I assume. Or
The installer SH is designed to be standalone, yeah. So you can pull it in and just run it. And it kicks off the rest. So it like clones, it pulls all the Ansible roles and then it actually installs Ansible. Like
right. So that's okay. So
yeah, like I'll show
that'll be
you.
the hand. Yeah.
Like we tested on Travis.
Right.
So like, let's see here. These two are the Docker ones. They don't use the install sh, but this one does, and so we can just see the output here. It's like, yeah, because we wanted it to be as simple as possible to run on a bare server. It's not like prerequisites to your prerequisites. You got to have Ansible, and then you can do everything. You know, so we wrote this install script.
It still needs to make a remote connection though.
Right. So yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Well, yeah, it does kick off to install packages in the end, right? So it's installing. It's still turning to yum or apt-get to install Apache and MySQL and all these other things.
Going getting the roles from Galaxy or where.
Right. Yep. See, so
I guarantee you that'll fail. So.
well, it's interesting how we solve that, right?
Right.
I mean, how do you install software without being able to put some software on the computer?
It's a long game.
do we just zip it all up and put? I mean, we could do that. Like,
We're able to mirror repos and stuff, but it's a process. That's all.
yeah.
Yeah, you can. It's not. Yes, it's possible. It's just
It's just process.
yes.
Yeah, so the install script, it even like generates a MySQL password and then runs Ansible Galaxy install to get all these roles, and then it runs the Ansible playbook to run the actual, just kick off everything else. Anyway, let's go back to this. You click Create Projects, and then and you get a dashboard. The main difference is like there's a node called Project in DevShop, so that represents like your site, and you can have multiple sites in that, like multiple instances for dev, test, live, and it keeps them organized in one place so you browse. Yep.
So is DevShop a Drupal install,
Yeah.
and it's not the same install as Aegir?
It's like 80% Aegir, right? So it just does a couple more things as extra modules, for example, that Aegir doesn't use.
But you don't use both.
Right. Well, yeah, it's Aegir under the hood. So it's like the hood. Aegir is essentially Drupal modules. So there's like it uses all of those, but it's just extra modules, a different theme.
Provision, but not
Uses
postmaster.
provision. Right. Yeah. So but it's almost the same. But yeah, we use a different theme and different modules. So
So for instance, in our Aegir 3x install, I added like LDAP module, standard Drupal LDAP module to build out.
Mhm.
So that would work here too.
right. Yeah.
That's
Something's hanging here. This is my local, so it's probably terrible internet. I think it's the fact that it's Drupal
Right.
is what is so awesome about this. Like you can add any module you want. Like we added SSH key module, the one that Drupal.org uses, so that you can upload through the website. You can upload your SSH key, and it writes it to the authorized host, and you're logged in. You know.
So how does it work? So what's great to me, this comparing to Aegir, different environments per site. Is that what
Yeah, we just use the term environments so that because site, it's a platform and a site. So instead of
Right.
doing multi-site, it automatically creates both every time you create an environment. So we're trying to reduce.
That saves a step.
Exactly, yeah, and it's
So can you migrate between stages in the environment?
you copy that, like we copy data.
Right.
We haven't dealt with like moving the sites from one to the other because it just gets confusing and complex. But I mean, we could, with enough code and usability, a nice usable interface, we could make something that does actually work like multi-site. But again, it's like it just gets confusing when you're dealing with when you want to deal with Git, your whole system in Git. So,
Right, but I can still be working on like a dev cycles platform environment.
right. It uses, yeah, it just uses multiple platforms, and they're the same because they're cloned from the same repo. That's weird. You got it there?
Yeah, so you're saying that like you commit code and it builds a new instance for that new branch or whatever, right?
Yep.
And then you say it runs, through the cache and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How would we modify that if we want to do something? Just as an example,
Yeah.
I don't like to just clear all the features,
Yeah.
features, do them one at a time.
Yep.
So how do you make those kind of changes?
We put it in settings, so you can you edit each one has an environment settings. So you just click edit on the node, and there's checkboxes for the hooks that you want. So if I go to but I also wrote a module called what did I call it? Hooks. You can put a file in your repo that is a YAML file that has hooks defined, much like Pancake, Quicksilver, or other systems. So you can put in on deploy whatever you need. But if you click environment settings, same thing as the edit tab. It'll have checkboxes in there that say deploy hooks. Which ones do you want for the site deployment hooks? Just edit it here.
Yeah, right. So like, how would you put new stuff like add?
Yeah, you would either use the hooks YAML thing, or you can write a little Drupal module and put it in the front end host master. But it's all Drush hooks too, right? So you can you can write your own Drush file, Drush hooks for pre or post tasks to do different things.
If you wrote that, would it show up here?
You would write a module for the front end and do a form alter, right? And put a checkbox in there and save the data somehow. And then use your provision hook to look for that flag.
I have a question with regards to like database like images. How does that work? Like if you want to spin up based off like a database tag that gets like a backup, is there a way for this to work, or does it do just run MySQL?
I added a install method feature, so you can actually decide, like when you create the environment, you can either run the Drupal profile or just leave it empty, clone another site, or import a database. But there's also the built-in Aegir. That Aegir backs up like everything all the time, so you can still use like backup and restore for that.
I'm just saying, like in a system where, like for us, our production environment, like they drop database backups every
Right.
day on a separate server that probably Aegir can never touch. So
Right.
So to do that, so as long as we have I guess as long as we copy that SQL file like onto that same server, that's where they're happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love and want to like automate some of that, but like having like a sync queue, for example, but I just haven't gotten around to it. But it's a Linux server, so you can write your own cron jobs and write your own scripts, and all the sites get Drush aliases automatically, so you're kind of free to do.
Actually just I soft link from our Aegir backups, which is where all those things to like a manifest file system. So just and that backup.
Okay.
It's separate.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that stuff. Like just forcing like rebuilds all the time, and we'll get there. Yeah. So you can change the branch and sync the data from other environments, and and like see the server stack. And so we're trying to just little info pop up. It tells you how to get SSH access and other information you might want.
What about Drupal files? Like, I don't know, Pantheon has a thing where you can say, copy the files from.
Yep.
Is that separate?
That's what this is. It's called a sync. It's an Aegir. It's a module. So
What is that?
files and data.
Communication.
So copy files, copy data.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it. So we just, got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying. I mean, basically, all the workflow stuff we're used to, we're trying to put right in there. And I just recently made this UI a little better, so you can see like this will be destroyed when you hit this button. And it's funny. Someone submitted an issue. A friend of mine submitted an issue. Like, if you uncheck the database, this is not true, right? So I have to tweak. I have to write some more Drupal code to just change the visuals of that. Let's do this. So I did test this demo ahead of time. So this is Docker. I'm going to launch some Docker containers with this guy. I got this to work. So you go to click create server, give it a name, MySQL and Docker, Apache on Docker. Just give it any. If you leave it at 0, it automatically generates a port. Eventually, we'll add the Nginx proxy thing built in. Haven't built that in for automation yet. If I click create server and we view these logs, it should kick that off.
That was like super quick. What's your queue set? Does it process queues faster or differently than Aegir?
Well, it's hosting. No, it uses the hosting queue daemon.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. We installed that out of the box for sure. That's it. It ran. It ran DrCompose up. Aegir needs to be able to reach the database from the front end, so we have to create a special network for it. But if I go here, server Docker stuff, right? So it took the name that I typed into the server node, used that to generate the YAML, and ran DrCompose up, all without me having to do much at all. I just told it to be Docker. And now we should be able to add a platform to it. Choose the web server, Docker stuff. That should verify, but I'll start making my site. Choose the one. There it is. Demo Drupal on Docker. Domain name. Docker stuff database server.
So because you're running this all local, it's going to be your DNS and stuff.
Right. Well, local.computer is a domain I bought,
Okay.
and it all resolves to the local host.
Oh, okay.
So you can use wildcard whatever local computer always goes to 127.0.0.1.
Nice.
So, yeah. I got a Hacker News for that one. People are like, you're crazy and stupid. I'm like, whatever, it's convenience. It's like for local development. I'm not like launching serious stuff on it, right? Because I'm firing up tons of sites all the time, so I need blah, 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 local computer, and not have to mess with those files, right? So yeah, it was awesome. I love that little feature. So feel free to borrow it if you want to use, if you need a domain. But there it goes. It's installing. It's running on the Docker Drupal database server, right? I'll show you Aegir Home. It runs a Docker local. Oh, that is. I'm in the wrong one. And there it is. So it generates. There's the DrCompose file. It generated for us from what we did. And so, like, what we're going to do right now, the volumes it uses, it just puts the whole platforms folder in there. But we could detect each platform on that server and only set up volumes just for the platforms that are on that server. So you can have your host have like multiple platforms, but each container can only see the specific sites that were assigned. And there it is. I have to just change the port because I don't have my Let's Encrypt thing set up yet, or Nginx proxy. What port did I say? 5,000?
5,000.
Oh. That's weird. That's weird. Oh, yeah. It's after 11. Session's over. Thanks. Let's go, let's go sprint on stuff. Thanks, everybody.